Welcome back to Witness. Al Jazeera's news editor, Awad Joumaa, is on a journey into Israel's troubled past, taking his father back to the place he was born but has never known. It has been a long journey, not just in distance, but in time and emotion as well.
It's been years since we lived here in Lebanon. It's part of our journey back home, one which will lead us to the land once called Palestine. While in the refugee camp in Baalbek, I hear a common refrain from my cousin Najwa.
Our children can't play in this camp because the camp is small, the alleys are narrow. The most important thing is to live in my country. We can't forget Palestine.
But the sad reality remains. Najwa has no chance of returning to her country simply because she doesn't have the right passport. I can only hope my father's Danish passport will allow him entry into what is now Israel. But before trying, we visit the Lebanese-Israeli border. Here behind this border fence, he sees his homeland for the first time in over 40 years.
I feel pain and bitterness. It's sad to see Palestine occupied by people who came from faraway countries. This fence behind, that you can see behind me, represents hope because occupations can't last forever.
On our last day in Lebanon, we visit my grandfather's grave. He never had the chance to return to Palestine.
The feelings that I have now have been a lifetime in the making. I think of the mountains, valleys, and the village my father told me about. We'd lived there for hundreds of years. If I make it there to the village where I was born, it will be the experience of a lifetime. The whole idea of it is overwhelming.
With his Danish passport, my father boards the plane in Amman, heading for Tel Aviv. These are the last pictures we were allowed to film before landing in Israel. Finally, my father is back in his homeland. We were not able to capture his first moments on arrival. At Ben Gurion Airport, he was questioned for 3 hours. But once out of the airport, and after a few hours' drive north, we stopped beside the shores of the Galilee for my father to take it all in.
When I saw the sea, I pictured my father here with his friends, how they led normal and secure lives here. I could see him playing. I pictured his smile, his happiness. On the drive to my village, I thought about the tragedy of my people in 1948, my family. How the Israelis expelled us from our land and homes. We were destined for a life in exile.
Back in the car, we continued our drive towards my father's birthplace in Galilee, to a village called Wadi al-Hammam, meaning the Valley of Doves. At long last, 60 years later, my father sets foot in our old village. He describes what happened the night our family fled.
Our village was attacked by the Jewish militia just after sunset. We had only 2 rifles, but our women were clever. They banged on water buckets, which in the valley where we lived sounded like gunfire. The militia retreated, giving us just enough time to get away.
But some did stay seeking safety in nearby towns and villages, carving out a life for themselves as Palestinians in the new state of Israel. Eventually they resettled in the area building a new village nearby. Aida is one of those who build a life here.
They brought us here and put us in tents. And after that we lived in barracks. And after 1975 we were allowed to build proper houses. There was nobody here when we came in 1948. People had already been expelled.
When I ask about life in Israel, she turns to my father and asks, "Do you want to stay here?"
I wish they would let me stay, but those of us who were forced out in 1948 are not allowed to return. But I am happy to have found my village. I am stunned that there is even a signpost, because all traces of many other villages were completely erased.
Not really knowing what to expect, we slowly make our way into the new village. To our amazement, we discover relatives we never knew existed. Next, we speak to Abu Bashir, a distant relative and collector. Through our conversation, it's clear to me we not only lost our home, but our extended family. He shows us something that he managed to keep all these years. It's a stamp, he says, once recognized by the British who ruled Palestine before Israel's creation. Once fertile farmland, my family's plot was confiscated by Israel and turned into a national park. Now it's a favorite picnic spot for Israelis. Here, amid the remains of what was once my father's village, close to where my grandfather's house used to stand, we stumble upon the old cemetery hidden behind the trees.
I used to hear about this cemetery as a child, but we were told it no longer existed. These graves are ancient. Here lie my grandparents and grand-grandparents' graves from before 1948. I cannot actually believe what I'm seeing.
One of our newly discovered relatives helped us locate the remains of my grandfather's house.
My father used to tell me about your grandfather and his house that was once here.
The stones you see here are the arches for the windows and the door. But as Musa tells us, these stones were incredibly expensive and were transported from afar. At one point, many were used as gravestones in the cemetery or taken.
This is all that remains of the house where my father was born. Later, when I ask him how it feels to see our land, our home for the first time, it's simply too much.
You know, this is very difficult for me. This is probably the most difficult question you've asked me so far. I know tears will not bring back the homeland, nor cure the longing for the people who once lived here. This is why we fought all these years. Maybe we didn't achieve anything, but my faith in the future and the new generation is strong.
I have never seen my father like this. But where there's pain, there's also hope.
Those who did manage to survive the attack and stayed behind are brave. They went through hell and fire under the Israeli military rule. It is a great achievement that they stayed in their homeland and didn't become refugees like us. It does not matter what passport they carry, they will always be Palestinians. The fact that they live here gives me great hope that one day we can return to our homeland.
After everything my father and the Palestinian people have been through, I ask, can we live side by side with the Israelis?
We've lived together since Moses and can live together again. But will they give us a chance to do that? That's the question. It's not whether we want to coexist, Can they live with us?
From Denmark, via Lebanon and into Palestine, my father and I have retraced his life's journey and rediscovered our past. The following day, my father will return to our home in Denmark. But now I know the only real home for him, and the millions of Palestinians like him, is the sacred place, Palestine.
The moving story of the journey home for my colleague Awad Joumaa and his father. That's it for now, but I hope to see you next time on Witness.